How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good. I've got a diet strawberry limeade, so
I got
I'm feeling
nothing.
good about life. How
I
about
got.
you?
I had something. I went to an oyster roast for the conservation voters of South Carolina, and it was amazing. I ate my weight in oysters, and still have the mud on me, and feeling good.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Oyster roast season. I love some oyster roast.
me too.
Um, it's Wednesday. Normally, someone said it's not Thursday. I thought you all do this on Thursday, but I'm the one that screwed up this week.
What do you
I'm gonna
have?
be I'm gonna be at Credit One, the tennis tournament
Oh yes, I looked it up
tomorrow.
to see what the sport was when you said
The
credit one,
sport.
and
Yeah,
it didn't.
normally well, it's all good. It's all good. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun. I'm excited for
Good.
that. So we had to switch to Wednesday. So
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the new oh, there's Lexi in the back. Appreciate y'all switching up for me. So I'll be Hey Stephanie.
Hey, oh my God, Stephanie. She's so precious. Did you see Stephanie made the yarn doll of was it
Of Dawn
the most recent Dawn Staley
and
and
Eric playing with the
Eric
muscles.
Bland. Eric Bland was the most recent with the muscles. So I love that she's making them where you can take the clothes on and off. She's
It's
so
precious.
amazing. And then she gave Dr. Kenny Kinsey his doll and met with him. And I love just knowing that those two magical people were together because I think that each of them sees things that the rest of us don't see. Like she sees things in people that she can just recreate with yarn, and he sees what happened in a
He's able to
kind
recreate things that were like,
way.
"What the heck happened here?" And he's able to recreate it with everything. So,
Mhm. They
um,
are both so special
and
in
they went to California Dreaming, which is like a
yes,
Columbia, South Carolina
that's so
institution. So,
yeah.
um, yeah.
Yes.
Um, so hey everybody. Let's
Hey
see.
y'all. So it's
Um,
Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
yes. Well, you know that this is near and dear to my heart because of the work that I
Mm,
do, but Sexual Assault Awareness Month is so important because so many of us we think we know. Like we think we know what happens, what goes on, what a victim may go through. But sometimes until we see like the statistics, and that's what I've been doing all month is putting up some different statistics on Twitter.
mhm.
Um, because sometimes we don't see the enormity of this issue and the
Right.
enormity of the problem until we're like,
Mhm.
wait, that how many people in South Carolina or how many people in the United States, how many people are affected by this?
Yeah.
Um,
And how
so
much goes unreported? I mean, it's estimated that 1 in 6 girls or 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys is affected by sexual assault and before they're age of majority. But so much goes unreported. And it's so sad and it reminds us to really kind of keep our eyes open.
it's one of those things that, for and the statistics on, actually successfully prosecuting these cases are so incredibly low. I think it's like
Hmm.
for every 100 cases that are brought, less than 2 are actually successfully prosecuted. And
Wow.
when you hear that, you're like, what the heck? Like, what is up with that?
Hmm.
But it's so interesting as a former prosecutor, looking at it from that perspective because you
Hmm.
have to look at everything being what can I prove? Like I always say there are
Hmm.
lots of things that I know, but there are not, but can I prove that? And
Hmm.
knowing what we can prove and how we can encourage people, how can we make the evidence collection better? Because
Hmm.
it's really crucial in prosecuting these cases. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is I was talking with someone last week, and they said, if someone is sexually assaulted, do we have to go to law enforcement before we go to the hospital, before we go to get a sexual assault
Kit.
a rape
Yeah.
kit?
Rape kit.
And the answer is no, you don't. You can go to the hospital, you can go and have a kit done. You can have it stored anonymously. In South Carolina, it's for over a year. You can have it stored anonymously. So in case today you don't want to report, but 6 months from now you do, you've got that evidence that can be collected. And so I was really shocked. I think it was one of those things I was like, oh gosh, I guess that is a good question. Like, I guess people maybe don't know that.
I think a lot of them don't, and people who want to get involved and help. One of my I'm the vice chair of Palmetto Citizens Against Sexual Assault, which is our child advocacy center and rape crisis center in the 3-county area in Lancaster, Fairfield, and Chester. And a friend of mine had been a victim as a child, and she really wanted to get involved and help. And I said, you can volunteer. And she became one of the people that gets called in the night to go and meet children at the hospital and kind of just be there with them if they have to go through that very traumatizing experience of having a rape kit administered. And she's so like sweet and fun and awesome. She was just the perfect person to hold their hands and kind of explain the process to them. And I'm so glad that she was able to volunteer in that way. And she just had her little, cell phone when she was on call, and she just run over to the hospital and do that. Is a very fulfilling kind of way to volunteer.
Being a volunteer advocate in that way, there are so many community organizations, the domestic violence shelters, the sexual assault, the child advocacy centers that would love to have people come and volunteer, get trained. A lot of them have chats or texts that people will call in with their like the hotline, and looking for volunteers to help in that way. And so it's one of those things, if that's something that's on somebody's heart to do that kind of work, and they think, I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to do that, but I want to help. That's something I know that a lot of different organizations would love to have support in that way. And it's so incredibly crucial for victims when they are in that moment looking for, what do I do? Where do I go? Whether it's online or they call in or whatever, that they have someone there that is understanding and that can help them navigate that process, because it is it's horrific. It really is. But to have that friendly face and that person to be there to walk them through the steps as it immediately, they immediately go through things. It's so.
Yes.
Have you done have you prosecuted any of these cases?
No, I am the very first bill I got passed as a legislator was Aaron's Law, which teaches children at every grade level to recognize and report child sexual abuse. And that's probably, and I did that my freshman year in the legislature. I served 4 terms, and I will never be as proud of anything I've done, professionally, as getting Aaron's Law passed in my freshman year. And we did it with 5 minutes to go toward the end of session. That was a great use of social media too, because I got people on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram to call the senators, because it went from the House to the Senate. The Red Cross stuck a CPR bill on there, but the lobbyist for the Red Cross had made angry the chairman of Ways and Means, so he wasn't going to let her CPR bill go. And if it meant killing my child sexual abuse bill, that was going to happen. So we had to strip it off at the last minute, the CPR bill, so that Aaron's Law could get passed. And people on social media made that happen by constantly calling their senators once it passed the House and went to the Senate. I wore a blister on my foot going back and forth between the 2 chambers. And so I would hear from administrators in schools every year about who reported when they got their Aaron's Law required training and had the programs with the students. I would hear from principals and teachers that, we had 3 kids report today and we're going to get the predator out of their life. And that meant just so much. Like, I can't imagine a bill I could have gotten passed that would have been more important than that one. And after that, in the legislature, I think I started chasing that dragon because I introduced sexual assault bills, just one right after the other, every single year, and didn't have the success with them that I did Aaron's Law, because a lot of like hunting and fishing bills and things like that got put ahead because sexual assault issues don't have lobbyists advancing them for the most part.
Very rarely, yeah.
Lobbyists get hired to do the things that bring in the money, and sexual assault prevention and justice. It doesn't generate money to hire lobbyists, so that's something
we've got a few folks that are up there doing really great work in that area. I know that Ren does a lot of work,
yes,
for,
oh my
women's
gosh,
rights and particularly with sexual assault awareness. Scadbassa, my boss Laura Hudson has been lobbying on victims' issues for years, and I think just this week, my brother Phil was telling me that this is crossover week, right? I'm pretty sure
this is crossover. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing I just came from, the legislators couldn't come to it because they're still in session right now.
Still in session. So that means, just to let everybody know, so crossover means it has to have been passed by one chamber or the other by this point in session in order for it to have the possibility of being taken up in the other chamber.
Except, well, by tomorrow.
By tomorrow.
By the end of session tomorrow, but it still can be taken up if they get a 2/3 vote by both chambers. But it's harder to do, and you're running out of time. So it needs to happen if you really want it to have a good chance of passing.
Well, I think they had a bill that was passed on revenge porn, I think this week.
Did they really? I introduced a revenge porn bill every single term when I was in session. I knew it would pass this time because there's a legislator who was like horribly affected in his family by sexploitation. And so I always introduced a revenge porn bill, and I couldn't get anybody to pay attention to it. And now the chairman of judiciary told me it would pass this session. So
I think it is going to pass. I think it was passed in the House maybe, and it's going to the Senate. But
it was originating in the House.
Yeah, so I think that, and it seems crazy to me to think that we don't have a bill when someone publishes or threatens to publish, photos of someone that they have given someone it's absolutely horrific. That there's really no law. Victims will call and say, well, what can we, and there's not a whole lot out there unless it's disseminating to a minor or unlawful use of telephone, which is like a 30-day offense. I mean, there's really nothing to charge them with. So I'm very excited that this is a strong possibility. That
I think it will definitely pass the Senate. I suspect it goes to Katrina Shealy's committee and will pass the Senate. I'm also very, very happy about that. It's we've needed it for so long, but our laws are so far behind. I think probably every state deals with this, but when you read what we have in the law, they're referencing things like piccolos and things that, like, I don't even know what a piccolo is, but it will talk about, just we're so far, we're in the 1920s with the things that our laws are designed to take care of.
Yeah. And I think that it takes that social media pressure. It takes people, so often people say, well, what can I do? Well, make a call, send an email,
right.
You can go into the state house and ask for your legislator or your senator to come out and talk to you. And those things are,
you can tweet them.
You can tweet that, but you can make a huge
they
difference.
will respond.
And let me tell you, if you can
So
say
we've
that
got
you are a person that lives in their district
yeah.
that is a voter for them, and listen, I don't agree with
Yes.
this, that is huge for a lot of these folks.
Put the term constituent in the
Mhm.
subject line, and you're going to get a response. Now, Danielle just asked, why does it take personal experience with, something
Oh,
to bring about change? I was very, I don't know. We took down the Confederate flag while I was in the House, and it was we would not have done that had our own colleague not died in the Emanuel 9 shooting. There was celebration. It was hard for me personally to get very excited about it because I felt like it should have come down when I was a child. It was not, it's like celebrating doing the minimum that you should be doing. Like your dog agrees with me.
he's like,
It's
right on, exactly.
right. And so, but had our own colleague not been killed, that Confederate flag would still be there. And so it's sad that, it's when a legislator is personally affected, I think they are. It's human nature, but it's very, very sad.
It really is, and I
that-
think, you know, looking at the hate crimes bill that recently, it took, basically, I was gonna say an act of Congress, but literally an act of the legislature. It was so difficult to get that passed, in the House, just I guess that was last
Yeah.
week.
Mhm.
And it's named for,
Clemente
Clemente
Pinckney, right?
Pinckney, who was one of the
But
9 that were murdered, and it's just absolutely horrific that it has to have a
it took a
connection
really long.
a connection
Hmm.
to, "This affected me," before I see that it's a problem, and I wish I had a good
You see this?
answer for that.
What is the South Carolina statute of limitations for sexual assault? You got this, Sarah?
This is what up my alley. There is no statute of limitations. There is no statute of limitations for criminal prosecution of any crime in South Carolina. We are one of the only
Right.
states in the country that we do not have a statute of limitations for criminal activity. However, we
There
do
is for
have
civil
for
cause.
civil, yeah.
Yeah.
And
But for criminal prosecution, that's so good.
it's a really great thing that we have here in South Carolina. And um, one of the things that I would love to see is expanding the statute of limitations civilly on these crimes, because so often there's delayed disclosure, delayed reporting, and you know we do allow in South Carolina. I think it's 21 that if someone was a child victim of sexual
Right.
assault, once they've become, I think the age of majority or 21 years old, then the statute of limitations will begin to run, if they choose to
Yeah.
sue somebody civilly. Um, but just the nature of sexual assault and victimization and all of that, giving people a longer period of time to deal with that, and to make decisions about that. Sometimes 2 years is not enough time at all to even come to terms with what's happened. So giving victims the benefit of as long as we possibly can in civil litigation. But thankfully, there is no statute of limitations in South Carolina for that. Thanks for that question, Leah.
Yeah.
But
I've got some bills that I want to see passed that I introduced in over the years that I don't know have been reintroduced. But did you know that in South Carolina, the drugs that are commonly used for date rape, like Rohypnol and GHB, are they're prescribed in different doses for things like narcolepsy
Mhm.
and low energy, and so like anti-aging doctors would prescribe them off label for libido and things like that. But folks can get them from a pharmacy with a prescription and then use them for date rape. And date rape is so hard to, with the date rape drugs, is so hard to prosecute because when you're drugged, you don't know what happened to
Mhm.
you. And I believe those drugs should be harder to obtain than Adderall. You know, if you're on Adderall, you got to get a new prescription on paper every single month. So I had a bill that would reclassify those drugs to the same schedule as Adderall, so that if you were prescribed them legitimately, that or even off label, you would have to get a new prescription every month. You couldn't get like large amounts that could be used for club drugs or date rape drugs. So
And it's
we have
not rare.
pharmacists.
It's not rare at all. I think people think that date
God,
rape is, well, just even drugging someone is something that's rare, and it's not. And again, I think
mhm.
someone made a comment that these things are very unreported, but they are, because so often we don't know, that we aren't able to quantify the data, because we
Right.
don't know how many people this have been affected by this. And
Hmm.
again, Lex is like, yes, exactly. We don't know, y'all.
Yeah, that's right. Lexi? I love the exclamation mark
He's
she
like,
puts on things.
exactly, y'all. That's it. I've
Yes.
heard my mama talk about that. But it's we're not able. So often people think maybe I was just really drunk. Maybe that's why I don't remember. I just quote unquote blacked out.
Right.
And that's why being a good wingman or wingwoman with your friends, making sure if you see something, say
Hmm.
something. Being an active bystander is what we call that, and making sure that if you see something or someone is bothering someone else, draw attention to that. Make sure that, the bar, if you're in a
Yeah.
bar, make sure people know. Call law
Hmm.
enforcement. Don't let someone who is visibly intoxicated go with someone that they may not know.
And
There's
you
a lot
know,
we can do.
it sucks that women can't leave their drinks unattended. That just absolutely sucks that, somebody could very well drop something into your drink, even like at a bar when they're mixing a drink for you. I've been to many places where I'm like, give me a bottled water with it and I will
I want
unscrew the
the top.
cap.
Exactly. Watch them.
Yeah.
It,
Whatever you give me, it's a cap, and I will unscrew it and I will hear it crack. Then I know it
and I'm
doesn't
good.
have anything in it.
Exactly.
It sucks that we have to do things like that because it's just a crappy era in which to live.
Well,
And
the more that
also, did you
we
know that?
go ahead.
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
One of the things that we talk about, I feel a lot of people will say, I feel so helpless, I don't know what to do. One of the
Hmm.
things that you can do, you don't have to be a lawyer or an official advocate to advocate for yourself and for other people. So if you see
Hmm.
something that doesn't feel right, we all have intuition. And I always tell people, follow that intuition. I know that's, again, it's not something quantifiable. I can't say, my intuition has
Hmm.
saved me 12 times this year. But if you have a feeling that something isn't right, follow that feeling. Except say,
Right.
okay, something's not right here, and that's okay. And trust your instincts. Um,
Trust your instinct.
but making sure that if you see something, say something. I know we saw that in the airports for the
Hmm.
longest time. It's like, don't leave your luggage
Right.
unattended. But you know,
Right.
don't assume things. Don't think that you're bothering people. Don't assume that, I don't want to get involved in what somebody else is doing over there.
Right.
All you have to do is just check in. And it's okay to do that. And that is a huge thing that will make such a huge difference if people just said, let me just ask. Are you okay? Do you need help? That's all you have to
Yeah.
do.
And so many of us, we're trained to be nice, be appeasing, don't offend anybody, just kind of go along and just be super polite wherever you go and whatever you do. And predators really zone in to the people who are extra polite, extra people pleasing, and that's who they look to take advantage of. Like they take advantage of the people who will kick their butt. They're looking to take advantage of the people who are trying extra hard to be really nice. And it's like we're taught to be, but that can sometimes, like it needs to be unlearned in
It,
a
it
lot
is
of
something that needs to be unlearned. And I encourage everyone, if you're dealing with someone and it's making you uncomfortable, but you're
cases.
trying to make them feel more comfortable, your comfort, your
paramount.
the way that you feel is way more important than not hurting somebody else's feelings.
Right.
Making sure that you are safe, making sure that you are taking and saying whatever you need to do or disengaging. Don't
Mhm.
worry about how someone else is going to take that, because predators are gonna use that against you. And if
Yeah.
you are uncomfortable, hey, you don't have to be nice to somebody. You just say, you got to get out of my face. You got to leave. You got to do whatever. And don't be afraid to ask for help, because so often we've done some trainings. Our sexual assault nurse examiner program have done so many trainings with bars and restaurants recently, training
Mhm.
them to be aware of situations in which someone may need to step in.
Yeah.
And I love that bars, restaurants, bartenders, waiters are getting that training, because oftentimes they're able to see things that not everybody else is seeing, and
Mhm.
can really help people who are in a situation that they're not sure how to get out of.
I had a bill that didn't pass that required that kind of training for the renewal of any commercial driver's license, because there's so much trafficking that happens at like truck stops, and that's like, prostitution, and even, rape and serial killers and all this. So many that haven't, that like get caught years and years later, we find out, well, they were, long haul truckers, and they went all over the place. And so I had a bill that would require, before you could renew your commercial driver's license, that you would have to take a class in human trafficking prevention, and how to recognize that, because people who were driving trucks and doing things that required a commercial driver's license are in a unique position to recognize and
To see a
report.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
So I want to just say, and I hate that I don't know your name, but I know that you're often on here, Disney Nerd 85. She just shared that she was sexually assaulted when she was a child and then as an adult, and didn't report. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that, and for telling us that, because that in and of itself is important to know, that so often victims are re-victimized by predators.
Mm.
And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that and to deal with that. Um, it's absolutely horrific. But I've seen you on here and seeing you advocate for people online. I can see that, oftentimes we think the worst thing in the world that happens to us will be the end of us. But so often that's what gives us our mission, that gives us our passion, that gives us, what we are to do with the world, how we are to shine in the world. And so, um, keep 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 spreading the word, keep talking, keep advocating for yourself and for other people. Sharing your story is so important, and please continue to do that, and please tell us what your name is too, if you
And
feel
it's so great
comfortable.
to do. And when you do, you let other people who've gone through similar things, and there are so many who've gone through
Mhm.
similar things, you let them know that they're not alone, and it means the world to know that you're not alone in in that. It's
Well, you are not alone, Amanda. You are not
very
alone.
not alone.
And let me tell you, we often say, well, if it helps just one person, I can guarantee you are helping more than one person, because
Yeah.
you are a survivor, and you're able to tell your story, and however
Mm,
you decide to do that in your life. We've just seen a little piece of that, but keep fighting, keep
yeah.
going, keep advocating for yourself. Um, we appreciate you being here.
Thank
Oh,
you. Thank you,
you'll we
Sarah.
we are planning to do these lives just to talk about sexual assault, and the way we prosecute them, and how all of that over the course of the next couple of weeks, because it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month. But we also want to answer whatever questions y'all have, because we can't,
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to just be about sexual assault awareness, but whatever you've
right.
got questions on, we're always happy to answer questions. I think I put that we're happy to answer questions about the world as much as we can, maybe just in the true crime and trials, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Whatever. If we don't know the answer, we'll tell
we'll
you.
tell you, like, I have no problem
But
saying I have no clue about that, but we'll
yeah,
also find out. I tell people all the time,
Yeah.
Google is your best friend. People be like, "Oh, my lawyer said he never Googles." I'm like, "Well, then he's not a real lawyer because I don't know a lawyer that
I
doesn't Google. Everyone Googles."
yeah.
But we will definitely find out if we don't know. So please, ask any whatever questions as Zeke put up our to support our show, because we've got a new episode that's dropping tomorrow.
In the morning.
Yep.
So Zeke has figured out to drop these like in the middle of the night, which some people call morning. I call it the middle of the night because I arise late. So but yeah, it'll be dropping super early. So Sarah, what do most states have as a statute of limitations for sexual assault, where ours is unlimited, other states have a limit?
So it
Is it
really depends. Like, there are some
there no
states that it's like 3 or 4 years. There are some states that will toll or stop the statute of limitations. Like, if a person, say this happens in, gosh, I don't know. I'm just making this up because I don't know what the statute is in Georgia, but it happens in Georgia and then they go to North Carolina, they may toll that statute
it's
of limitations
that's
for a
fine.
period of time. They'll stop it from running. Um, but I've seen anywhere from just a few years to, I mean, I've seen up to like 15 years. So it really depends. I've put on my Twitter today, and I've shared it before. Please go on there, see what your state says. What is the statute of limitations in your state?
Yeah.
Because they're different for different crimes. And it's important
Mhm.
to know that. You want to know, wherever you are. I think Wyoming may be the only other state that does not have statute of limitations on any criminal
Okay.
prosecutions. But go and let me know. I'd love to hear from you on Twitter. What does your state have? Because that also gives
Because
you
that's
something you can advocate for.
what's interesting is South Carolina, that's something that we do right. We have just an unlimited statute of limitations for criminal acts, but then we have these things that we do wrong and that we're so unique in doing, like we do have a statute of limitations for spousal rape. You have to report that within 30 days, and there have
Yep.
to be aggravating circumstances.
Someone's been
And
reading my
so
tweets. That was my tweet yesterday.
Oh, was it really? I
It
had
was.
a bill that would eliminate that in 2019, and it got no traction. It was, there were people who said to me, "Wait, that's not even possible. Spousal rape isn't even a thing. It's not,
It is a
if
thing.
you're married, rape isn't even a possible thing because you just have this obligation to have sex with your spouse." And it just like really crazy to me that there are people who think like that, but there really are. And there's like actually a good many people who think like that. So I'm hoping, I don't even think it's like pending now as a bill, but I'm hoping that we can get rid of that limitation on spousal rape. And so many people who are, like you said, victims of sexual assault, they don't even know what happened to them was rape until they get out of that whole mind fog and really escape it, and then they can look back on it and say, oh my gosh, what my spouse was doing to me was criminal. And that's going to
Yeah.
take more than 30 days in most cases.
Absolutely. The requirement, and that's for spouses that actually still cohabit, they live together. Now, if spouses
Mhm.
are estranged and they don't live with each other, then that particular law won't apply. But with spousal sexual battery, I think it's changing mindsets. Number one, changing the cultural understanding that, um, you know, I told a victim last week, I don't care if someone has had sex with someone 7,000 times.
You
7,001,
have to do that every time.
if you do not consent, then that is
Mhm.
sexual assault. Um,
Right.
and so I think changing mindsets and changing the understanding, not only with our legislators, but with our law enforcement and prosecutors and people
Right.
that work in this, that there are, trauma is a real thing. The way that trauma affects your
Hmm.
brain when you have been the victim of a crime, whether it is domestic violence or sexual assault or burglary, your understanding the safety that you felt in your own home, in your own skin, is completely just wiped out when you were victimized. And getting back
Hmm.
to a place where you feel safe to be able to report, that you feel that it's going to be worth
So
it,
important.
that they're going to listen to me, and that something's actually going to happen, that I'm not going to make this situation worse, that I'm not going to bring further um, harm to
Mhm.
myself. That's something that, we have to change culturally. And having these conversations, I know sometimes people are like, why the heck are we talking? You have to talk about these things. You've got to, or else nothing changes.
If you're gonna, yeah, it's got to be talked about if it's going to be changed at all. And so that's there's so many things that I think that we need to address in South Carolina, and I'm sure, in many states. I think we're one of only a handful of states that have a limitation like that on spousal rape,
Mhm.
as opposed to other rape, like that distinguishes spousal rape and limits it in such a way. It's something that I think it really shows that, the way that our forefathers thought about sex and about consent. We don't even define consent in our law, and many states don't define consent, but consent needs to be defined because it can be withdrawn, all contrary to
Absolutely.
popular belief.
That, and it's one of those things that when I'm doing, I train regularly. I train, the public, law enforcement, all sorts of folks. And even correcting that mentality within law enforcement is difficult because,
Mhm.
you know, at any point in any sort of sexual encounter, consent can be withdrawn. And if it is withdrawn and the sexual act continues, that is
Mhm.
a sexual battery. That is sexual assault. Um, and I think that's where a lot of issues for victims come in, because they say, oh my gosh, maybe I should have been more forceful. Maybe I should have done something more overt to make them understand. And it's, when that consent is withdrawn, or even if it's just not given, even if nothing is said overtly,
Right. Mhm.
you know, we have to do a better job of communicating what we are okay with and what we're not okay with, but also that
Yeah.
sometimes those lines, things get blurred. But there is no point where a victim is ever responsible for their assault, period.
Right.
The only thing that
And I
causes
think that,
sexual assault is a rapist. The end.
yeah. Yeah. And the only consequences for getting too drunk should be a hangover
Mhm.
or whatever, however bad you feel. Rape is never a logical or foreseeable consequence of
Never.
those kinds of things. Uh, Nicolosi Vaccaro, who I'm following on Twitter and love this person's energy so much, says, "Thank y'all for doing what you do, and I'll be sharing with my daughters. Thank you." It's something that, I talk about it a lot, and sometimes I forget to just actually talk directly with my daughter about these things. But she hears it, vicariously, but it's something every so often she'll say, like, "Mom, I heard you talk about so and so to like somebody else," and she's like, "And I just want you to know I get it." And so I think we also, we don't have to like even say things directly. We're influencing what our children think about things just by being advocates
And
and
letting them
indirectly.
know that it's okay to talk about these things, to ask questions. We did a training about 3 weeks ago, and it was about protecting our youth. And
Mm-hmm,
um, our final segment of the day, we had law enforcement, we had pastors, we had teachers, we had
mm-hmm.
parents, community members. Um, and the last part of the day, we spent talking about how do we talk to our kids about this kind of stuff. And it can be
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I mean, I grew up in a household where, we learned proper names for things. A lot of people have
You
never
did.
learned that. One of the things that we heard.
I grew up in a household where nothing got talked about ever.
Well,
So
yeah, well, and one of the things that someone brought up was this child was saying that someone touched her pocketbook, and the parents didn't understand what she was talking about, and she was talking about she was touched, vaginally. She was molested, and it turns out,
And
You
it
think
took longer to figure
it
it
took
out.
longer to figure out because she was using the word that she had, and it was just, so making sure our kids know you can talk, they're
Mm,
safe adults. And sometimes parents are not safe
yeah.
adults, but making sure that kids know who safe adults are, how they can identify safe adults, and how they
Yeah.
can, um, you know, they can ask questions, and that there are body parts that no one has a right to tell you what to do with
Right.
or touch you.
Yeah.
And making sure, I don't have any kids. I have two huge dogs, as y'all can see, Lex and Lou. Um,
Mhm.
but making sure that kids have ownership in their bodies, making sure that saying, you have to go hug Mr. So and so or Miss so and so over there. If a child is not okay with that, that is a way that we
Right.
teach them that someone else has access to their body. And we may not think of it
Exactly.
like that, but if that child
Mhm.
doesn't want to go hug that person, we don't have to make them go
Or
do that.
exactly. Exactly. Or saying that if a boy is mean to you or
He
is like
likes you.
physical with you, he likes you. That's that has always been the most horrible thing. Like, how does that mean he likes me, and why should I appreciate that kind of demonstration of affection? That's teaching me that violence equals um, affection, and that's a very
Mhm.
dangerous thing, I think, to teach our children. So Disney Nerd 85 has asked, in West Virginia, there's statute of limitations on sexual assault and first degree sexual assault, 1 year on second degree and third degree. So no statute of limitations on first degree, but 1 year on second and third degree of sexual assault. What is the difference? And I think it's different from state to state
Mhm.
as to what the degrees are. But can you give us a sense, Sarah, of what might constitute first, second, and third degree sexual assault?
So this is very general. I am a South Carolina
I know
lawyer.
it's South
So
Carolina.
that's all I can tell you, but I can kind of give you an idea. Generally, first degree is going to be the most severe. So there's going to be an element of maybe kidnapping or some sort of physical assault in conjunction with a sexual assault. Generally, second degree will have something to do with some sort of coercion, some
Mm,
threatening nature. So you'll have, like, for the first, it'll be an actual violence. Second will be like that threat of violence, and then for
mm,
the third, it may be something where someone is incapacitated in some way, whether they are intoxicated, they may be intellectually or physically disabled, not able to give consent. That's generally what a third is. Please don't take any of
mm.
what I just said over the last 30 seconds to mean that's what that
Right.
stuff is
That is
in your
not,
state. That is not what I'm
we are not
saying.
giving legal
I
advice.
am not giving legal advice. I'm encouraging you
We
to go read the law in your state, but that's
Mhm.
generally how it goes. So I
Right.
hope that helps. But please, go look these things up.
Mhm.
Google it, and you can see the
Right.
difference there. But that's kind of a
Mm.
a general, Amanda, for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Sonic is so good tonight, y'all.
Is it?
It's saving my
Mitch got
life.
he got a shake from Sonic the other night. I haven't had one in forever. And I just am always like, no, I don't want one. And then I tasted it and was like, OMG, why do I ever turn this down? This is so
So
good. It
good.
was, I think, strawberry. It was so good.
I'm a strawberry girl.
Um,
So good.
I want to tell you about another law in South Carolina that is really, really messed up, and I'm sure you know, but it's the fact that law enforcement in South Carolina, if they have sex with, if they have, they can't, they're not allowed to have sex with inmates, but if they have sex with a detainee, then they can use the defense of consent, which I think anybody who is detained or arrested doesn't have the ability to consent. They don't have, we can't infer that
That
if they have
power
sex with them,
dynamic. Are you kidding me? Like,
it's of free will, right? And so had a bill to say that, with no one that law enforcement is dealing with in that kind of deal. Now they can go home and have sex with their boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever. And that can be consensual. But when there is that power dynamic of you're in your official capacity as law enforcement, you cannot say that the person you're dealing with as a detainee or an inmate or anybody is has given consent, because that's just not really possible. That hasn't passed yet. I don't think it didn't pass while I was in the legislature. So I'm hoping that it still will. But I am, yeah.
That's a really good segue into just power dynamics in
Mm-hmm.
sexual assault and domestic violence even. It's what we think of as sexual assault or domestic violence or whatever. It is not always what we've trained ourselves or what society has taught us what those things are. And I think
Yeah.
that's why we have so many folks that don't report to law enforcement, because they fear, well, look at what I did, or look at how am I going to be looked at during
Mm-hmm.
this, or they're going to say, well, why did you do this, or why did I do that? And
Mm-hmm.
the long and short of it is, particularly when there are power dynamics, where one person has more power than another,
Mm-hmm.
and even not, there is absolutely nothing that a victim does that would ever that would ever say, well, this person deserved what happened to them, or it's appropriate, or it makes sense, or victim blaming and shaming happens all the time. And so when we see those things, I encourage, I said something to a solicitor last week about an incident where there was a lot of victim blaming and shaming. And if we have, we've got to call out things when we see it, because that's how things
Mm-hmm.
change. Um,
And I hear from victims a lot of times who don't want to report, don't want to testify. It's like, nobody will believe me. You don't understand the power that you don't understand the power he has in the community. He's so well respected. Nobody is going to believe that he did this. And a lot of times, sadly, they may be right, but there may also be three or four or 10 or 100 other people that predator has done the same thing to. And when victims come out in like a group, it always makes me just energizes me so much. The Bill Cosby cover of, I think, Time magazine, or
Mhm.
Life, if Life is still, I don't know, I feel like I'm really old, but it said, he said, and had all the women,
All the
and he said, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said,
Mhm.
because he said, she said may not be that strong of evidence, but he said, she said, she said, she said, she
Times
said, she said.
40,
That
right?
is, yes. And that was over decades.
Decades,
And every
decades.
one of them thought they were alone. And then they started finding out the same thing had happened to somebody else. And then it gave them the courage to come forward. And it was like dominoes when they started coming forward. And it was, I mean, I have chills thinking about it. Just how how justified they must have
Mhm.
felt, each one of them, thinking for years that they were the only one that happened to,
A
and
predator
then
does
being,
not just decide one day that, I'm gonna rape someone and this is gonna be, one and done. That's
right.
not how it works. There are behaviors oftentimes from childhood that, if you look back at a predator or a rapist, you see behaviors that, if they were maybe appropriately dealt with decades before, tons of victims would be saved. But oftentimes it starts with dating violence, more
Mm-hmm.
aggressive, and with a boyfriend or girlfriend. Those things tend to escalate, and victims will say, well, I've never heard anybody say anything about this person, or I just think I'm the only. very rarely are you the only one that this has happened to. You may be the only one that is standing up today saying that this happened to you, but the majority of the time, if there is a violent predator, it has happened multiple times before, and you never know who you are also, while you are advocating for yourself and supporting yourself, you are also doing that for somebody else. And that is really, and it's an incredible way to take back the power and control that was stolen from a victim. Um,
And that's
to
such an awesome thing to witness when it happens. And you
Yeah.
see that transformation in a victim who does take back their power, and then some, may even connect with another victim who's doing the same. And it's life changing. It's life changing to observe. I
Oh
know
my
it's
God.
life changing to experience.
It is, and I was thinking about a person that I worked with probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, and this person just was so incredible in that I'm not gonna let this define me. This is not gonna define
Mhm.
me, and, um, I'm gonna move forward from this, and I'm gonna take back my power, and I'm gonna take back what was lost, and I'm gonna put something good out into the world. And this person is now a victim advocate, working with victims on a daily basis, where and it was a long process for this
Mhm.
person. But to see, how this person has gone from being a victim to being a survivor. And I use the word victim because that's a legal term in South Carolina.
Right.
Um, but how someone has gone from victimhood to surviving and thriving. It's incredibly empowering to see and to be able to help someone through that process and see them, um, just be there for other people who may be in that situation. And I mean, and can you imagine, like, if you are a victim and you have someone who's there and says, "I've been here. You are going to survive this. You are going to make it through this. This is not the end of your story here today. This may just be the beginning." Um, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
It really is.
And if you're we've given you several things to kind of research and see, talking to our viewers, like do research and see if you want to advocate for. One other thing I would recommend is if you've got, if your kids are looking at different colleges, and one thing to, I think, really, really consider and advocate for on colleges and university campuses that you care about is this notion that there are some colleges that do not give amnesty for violations of the honor code if you are reporting sexual assault. For example, you might be the victim of a rape or know someone who is the victim of rape on campus or off campus involving students, but there might also be some marijuana smoking involved or some underage drinking involved, and colleges that really, really care deeply about preventing and bringing justice in sexual assault cases will give amnesty for honor code violations that are discovered in the process of reporting sexual assault. Many colleges do not give amnesty for honor code violations because many colleges want to discourage the reporting of sexual assault because that affects their ranking in terms of violence, and because that's a factor considered in college ranking. But
I
those are
would
the
love
ones.
for us to do something on Title IX. So
Yeah.
Title IX is a huge, like, colleges and
Hmm.
sometimes how they discourage victims from coming forward. There are some
Yeah.
colleges who do amazing work, but
Seriously. Yeah.
that would be
We
a
had
great thing for us
couple
to
of
do.
years ago, some young girls were sexually assaulted on one college campus. They went to a very conservative college down the street, and they were so violently assaulted. They were being carried in an ambulance. They jumped out of the ambulance and ran away because they knew that their college would expel them for drinking. Never mind the fact that they had just been raped. They knew their college would expel them for drinking, so they ran away from the ambulance. And that illustrated that fact more than anything, that colleges should be giving amnesty for honor code violations that are discovered in the process of sexual assault reporting.
Anything that someone does to, sorry.
What's he doing? Is it she?
They're just playing with each other back here, just like both of us going at it. All right, boys. All right, thank you. We got it. Thank you. It's an intense moment. I know, but there's so much about what goes on college campuses that the majority of victims of sexual assault are under the age of 25. So that tells us when we have folks that are in situations like on college campuses or are in, going to parties, all of those things. Doggies, exact. Thank you.
Hey!
We see more instances of sexual assault. So we've got to do a better job in those situations in schools, colleges, student organizations, all of those things, giving our students, our kids, the understanding of what sexual assault is, how to report that, and not give a damn about what that college is going to do, because I would sure love to be involved in a lawsuit against one of
Oh,
them.
I would too. I would too.
I don't even do that kind of work, but that just makes
I'd figure it out. Yeah.
Crazy thinking about that.
Right. And they also should be able to withdraw from a class where someone who sexually assaulted them is in that same class without a grade of fail, with a WF, withdraw failed. I had a bill to do that on our public campuses, because I can't imagine trying to finish out a class with someone sitting in that classroom who had sexually assaulted.
They have to make accommodations though under Title IX. They have to do that. If someone has reported that sexual assault, there are protections for college kids. So if you have a college kid, please make sure that they know that there are protections out there for them. We handled that at SC Van regularly, working with victims of sexual assault on college campuses.
Awesome.
Because you've got to know what, even if you choose not to move forward criminally, there are still protections from Title IX on college campuses that will protect a victim from having to be in a classroom with somebody. And we've even gotten restitution from a defendant in a Title IX case where the case was not pursued criminally, but they pursued it on campus. So there's a lot. I mean, we could go on for 75 years about Title IX, and maybe we will do a podcast about Title IX, because it's so misunderstood. But there are protections that are out there. So
awesome.
And thanks for dealing with my pups, y'all.
Our last commenter was Jay, who has his own live YouTube. And I want to encourage everybody to go subscribe and watch The Shaming of Jay. The Shaming of Jay. He is so funny. And I could just sit and listen to
the best sense of humor. The Shaming of Jay, right? That's
yeah. The Shaming of Jay. He's that on Twitter and on YouTube and all this, but subscribe to his YouTube channel, because I could listen to him comment on the news, the weather, anything. He's been doing trials, watched him throughout the Gwyneth Paltrow trial, and it was so funny.
What a crazy thing that was. My God almighty.
It was so extra good listening to Jay talk about it though. The lawyer would get up, he'd be like, sit down, you got nothing to add, sit down. And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Yes. So good.
Thank you to CS too. Thank you so much. We appreciate your super chat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. This is our second time with this is Restream. So we're able to see y'all's comments and put comments up. So we appreciate y'all working, dealing with us as we're figuring this out.
Yes, before we had to hold our phones up and read the comments on the YouTube.
Reading the comments and figuring it out. And now Zeke is here with us, so he's able to help put some stuff up there and help us out.
It's 9 o'clock.
It's 9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock. My gosh, time flies.
Thank y'all.
Thanks for coming, y'all. Thanks for being here with us. Thank you for those of you that have bought us a coffee or supported us on here. We are very, very appreciative of that. And we hope that you will continue to join us as we chat about these issues over the next couple of weeks. And of course, our regular podcast, which is dropping. I feel like I'm a rapper when I say that. It's dropping tomorrow. Like, I'm very excited.
Look at your microphone. You look like a rapper.
I am, y'all. Look at this. I feel like I'm like Big Mama in the AM. I'll see you on 101 FM. Like, I'm ready for that. But it also helps too. So hopefully we'll notice a difference with that. But so tomorrow, anybody have any last minute thoughts on who we interviewed for tomorrow?
We should tell them, since they stayed with us through the end of the live.
So
thank you.
You're right, Jay.
Smash the like button. Thank you, Jay. Please be sure and like and subscribe, and let's tell them who is our guest
for tomorrow. Alan Wilson is joining us, y'all. We got some details about what was going on during the Murdaugh trial from the Attorney General himself.
He really didn't hold back. I thought with appeals pending, he might say, "Oh, I can't talk about that." But no,
he talks
about a lot.
He did. He talked a lot. So I'm excited for y'all to hear that. Awesome. Lots of deets there. And yeah, follow us. We'll see you all on Twitter. Yes, C Smith, Big Mama, that was my that was my name. I was like Big Mama or SFO. So Big Mama in the AM. I would love to do that at some point. But well, good night, y'all. Thank you. Appreciate y'all. Hope that y'all learned a little something. And please make sure you ask the questions. Questions are the only way we learn and the only way we can change the world. So keep asking, keep advocating, and y'all have a great night.
Thank you.